Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles to be specific. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm just going to listen to the music. I never make this the intro music. Pretty cool. Yeah, Sean Flynn wrote this one. All right, everybody, welcome to Agree to Disagree here at the TNAM Radio Network at TheNewAmericanMedia.com. My name is Brian Engelman. I'm your host, as I have been for the past 5.5 years. I want to thank each and every one of you for linking up and joining the conversation and sharing this information with all of your friends in your social network. On Twitter, we're at American_media_. Facebook.com/TheNewAmericanMedia. Both of those are linked over at TheNewAmericanMedia.com. And that's when you can click play to listen to this show live whenever we broadcast. And we broadcast whenever we line up a fun show or a necessary show. A lot of what we do is because we think it's necessary, not because we like doing it. But there are some important things going on in the world, and I think it's important that we have better conversations about those things. So either you can join that type of conversation. We ask you to seek truth, challenge dogma, and have fun. We want you to join the mostly civil conversation here at the New American Media. Look, come from your point of view and may the better person win. It's like an MMA fight of ideas. Just show up. Here's the topic. Make your best points. Let's hash some of this stuff out because it's hard to know what is true. It's hard to know what you're supposed to think about a story when you hear some things up front, like the fake news. I mean, this whole thing about fake news, that's exactly what Hands Up, Don't Shoot was. It was a story that was told right after something very shocking happened, and very few people happened to be there and witness what happened. So that makes a difference. That's going to make a difference. And we have to figure out what information is accurate so that we can put together a story and quickly figure out, all right, this is what we think we know, and let's not jump to conclusions before we actually get all the information. Right now, if you're not a part of Hillary Clinton's political world, there is an attack on your way of thinking into becoming illegitimate thought. This is word crime, this is thought crime, this is pre-crime, this is Orwellian. It's not good. We're headed to a very interesting place on the internet, and I'll tell you what, out of all of the time that any human being could have been alive, just think of what people like Benjamin Franklin would have been having conversations about as we tried to figure out how we should all interact with each other. Right now, the internet is a way for everybody to instantaneously communicate. It is a very powerful tool that could be misused by people for their own personal gain. And we have to safeguard ourselves against those things. So we join over here at The New American Media, at Agree to Disagree. And we have some of these conversations, and we try to have fun doing it. Please hit subscribe on youtube.com/TheNewAmericanMedia. Leave your comments, your questions. Join 5.5 years of conversation. We have been with Blake Walley. He is our guest for today's program. Blake has been on so many of those programs at the RNC. Or Blake, why don't you recap for everybody what you've been doing with us over the past few years, if you could?
Well, I'm a fellow guy in the alt media, if you will. And, I guess we've both been doing our own thing, promoting media in our own way, in our own world view, because, as you have said many times, the mainstream media has failed us. And so, it's up to the citizens to rise up and use these new technologies like social media to spread news and information to our friends and family and whoever, and some of us are maybe try to do that more than others. Say as we're running a show right now, but it just depends. Jumping in, taking that plunge, and being the media, if you will. And so we've both been we've collaborated on a lot of projects. We've done a lot of shows and interacted quite a bit. Yeah,
Let's walk
and
through a
just
few of those. We were there at Bundy Ranch covering that. We were at the RNC covering that. We were at the DNC in Philadelphia. Blake was at that. Blake was in Las Vegas. What was that? 4 years ago when you caught voter fraud with Romney and Ron Paul's people with the delegates for the state of Nevada. We've been in a lot of interesting places, and we were in So anyhow, there's a lot of shows that go a long way back, and we've seen the importance of elections a couple of times now. So it's interesting to look at this one. And Blake, one of the things I want to do, I have a resolution, a New Year's resolution, if you will, for 2017 to do more shows, but to do them more concise, to do them quicker, and to stay more focused on just a couple of topics. So that's my New Year's goal, and you can hold me accountable to whether or not I can increase the production of what I've done over the past year in 2016 and do better in 2017. So in this election, we have the Electoral College vote that's coming up in just a minute here. Can you kind of talk us through some of the things that you're hearing about that topic? Because it's very interesting.
Well, as you brought up, I was a delegate. Well, I don't know if you were talking about how I caught voter fraud, but anyway, that story was where I was a delegate to help, vote for Ron Paul during this election. So there's also, I guess, these electors from the Electoral College, depending on your state and how many representatives and senators you have, get to vote on the people's behalf for whoever was selected. And so it's kind of a different sort of thing. So like the delegates can be bound or unbound, and it's a big complicated process. I don't want to get into all of that. But the idea is that some of these electors that are supposed to vote, cast their votes for Trump or Hillary or whatever, can perhaps change their mind and vote their conscience, so to speak. And so there are people on the bitter Hillary side who are trying to persuade, I use that loosely, in many different ways of their persuasion, to warn or to try to convince these electors to change their votes coming up. I forget the exact date, but it's coming soon.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think it's the 19th. I know that we should...
Yes, you're right. You're right. It's 2 days.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, I don't happen to have the article in front of me, but it is an important thing, and you just wonder. I've had some very interesting conversations saying, look, and their interpretation of the Electoral College was very interesting. They phrased it this way. They said, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to paraphrase, and I'm not going to name the individual, but the conversation was, the majority of the people in the country, the popular vote went for a certain candidate. And the Electoral College was put in place in case the person who got the popular vote was not as qualified or grossly unqualified or something like that. And so the Electoral College is only there so that they could be a counter against the majority vote. But since the majority vote already determined the presidency, they have to do nothing to overturn the will of the people. And I said, wow, that is not the way I understand that at all. So I don't know how much you've dug into the interpretations of the Electoral College or not, but I just find it a fascinating subject, Blake. I know there's a few different angles and different ways of thinking about popular vote versus the Electoral College, and do we really understand this system? Do you think that we do?
No, I don't think we totally understand it, but I think we learned a lot about it recently and why it's set up a certain way and why this is a good thing. Because otherwise you have these these dense populations, these major cities that outweigh everything. So you got a state of California, which is just enormous compared to the rest of the country, or New York City. You get this huge weight of people that are going to vote a certain way. who in this case voted for Hillary, which make up the vast majority of her voters. And these are people that are not necessarily in touch with the rest of the country. Of course, they have their own right to vote, but it's set up to kind of be fair, across the country, a bit better representation of who won. And looking at that, the maps, I mean, it's obvious whether she won the popular vote or not. It's clear that Donald Trump won 90% of all of the counties in the country. I mean, the map is overwhelmingly red except for the dense blue areas, your LA, San Francisco, Chicago, New York City, stuff like that, Houston, that kind of stuff that really swings it, for a popular vote in her case. So yeah, it's set up. It's like checks and balances, and I think that it's what it was supposed to do this time. And I agree with the result, of course. But I mean, like I said, I think it comes down to the county map really speaks volumes about how the country feels, and you can't just have the president, our president should be selected just by the urban city dwellers that are in their own little bubble and in these certain urban areas.
And you got to say that back when this system was started, we've been going at this since the late 1700s over here. There's been a lot of ups and downs in that time, and a lot of mistakes have been made and things corrected and other mistakes made as we've gone through just a very interesting time. But it always, even back to those days, I mean, you think about that classic cartoon, the Don't Tread on Me, the snake severed into 13 separate colonies. That concept of, hey, you're the 13 big states, you're the 13 big urban areas, and then there's the rest of us in here. We're strong if we're linked up together and we're friends and we're working on the same team and we have a general set of guidelines to stay with. It's just very interesting because, yeah, like you said, when this system was put in place, it was specifically put in place to counterbalance the impact of society depending on, are more people rural or are they more city? The dense urban areas and
back then it would have been New York, Boston, Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And, what if they all voted for one person and
Charleston,
the rest of the 13 colonies? All the bigger cities back then. Yeah, you can't have. Of course, they have a big weight to them, and they can do their own states things anyway. But with the federal government these days, especially, that's kind of a dangerous thing. But that's a side issue. But it served a purpose then. It still does it now. The forefathers knew what they were doing, and I guess we didn't appreciate their genius.
All right, we're talking with Blake Walley. If you're not following him on Twitter, he's at eccentric99. I'm not sure if I said that at the beginning. Actually, I don't think I did. Sorry about that. I just, right. In the middle of a sentence, I just went right to you and asked you a question, and I forgot to do the intro.
Cost me thousands of followers.
I know, man. Look, this is going to be the show that does it. This is going to be it. Every single show is going to be the show that does it. But yeah, follow him on Twitter. He's at eccentric99. But yeah, this whole concept then about what is real and who to blame with this whole Russia situation. Just give me a couple quick thoughts on Russia. What is this about? Do you completely shut down that there's no evidence, or is there, where there's smoke there might be fire? Where do you land on that issue?
I don't believe it at all. I think they're just looking for an excuse. They've lost, and they have no credible sources to say that the Russians interfered, and even Russia's pushing back and saying, hey, either prove it or, stop talking about it. And then Obama did his press conference yesterday, and he just kind of stumbled and stalled and didn't really have a clear answer for that. And of course they don't. They're just this group and the Democrats, and they're terrified of losing power, and they might not get that back. And this is the globalist death cry. This establishment, the swamp in D.C. or what have you, is this could be their last. It was supposed to be go from Obama was supposed to hand the baton off or the torch to either Hillary or Jeb Bush, maybe Marco Rubio, and now they didn't think they would. They thought they had it in the bag, and now they've got to give it to this outsider Trump, and they don't know what's going to happen. And so now they're seeing the possibility they're going to lose control, and now they're trying to figure out anything that they can do to try to delay it or change the outcome, whatever it takes. And yeah, they're going just crazy with this Russian hysteria, and it's not looking good for them because I don't think too many people are buying it.
Well, it sure is interesting, and every time I hear John Kerry and I think of Hillary Clinton and I think of Barack Obama and I think about red lines and I think about Syria and I think about Russia, and a war is going on, and we really don't want to get dragged into all of these wars, and there's supposed to be a voting on situations like this, and if you're going to go into some of these conflicts, it's something that's out in the open so that we can discuss it and figure out how to end it as quick as we can. There's a sense that this has kind of gone that direction where, when you had Eisenhower warning about a military-industrial complex, like you said, it was either going to Hillary, which was going to be more Obama, which was just more Bush. It's the same groups that are steering everything. This is very interesting because we really don't know what the next administration is going to look like. We have no idea if they're going to be cool or if they're not. I find that intriguing. I mean, are you hopeful?
Yes, very. I really think there's an actual legitimate chance of change simply because, Donald Trump is a guy who gets things done. He's anti-establishment until I see otherwise. And, I'm just, I really couldn't be happier.
All right. Well,
I really feel like hopeful for the first time that, even though it could be chaotic, I don't know what's going to happen. I realize there's, there could be potential problems. I'm just, for me, I'm anti-establishment, and this is the first candidate in I don't know how long. We could, without getting down the rabbit hole of different stuff, and whether Reagan was an outsider or not, or whether he was influenced by George Bush. But this time, I really think that Donald Trump is on our side and is not just into the whole Washington machine.
Well, let's just think about the Dow Jones Industrial creeping up there around 20,000, Blake. This has an eerie similarity to the way it did in 2007, 2008, when the housing bubble was just kind of everything was just moving in one direction pretty steady. How do you feel about the economy right now? Do you think this is are we ready to hit a downturn? Do you think there could be a black swan event that pulls the carpet out from underneath everybody? Is Trump going to be set up to inherit just a mess everywhere? People did say the same thing about Obama, that he was handed a crumbling world. And that's true. There's nobody that can dispute that. Nobody could dispute that. So, how do you feel about the way things are set up? Do you like the picks that he's making? Do you think this positivity is going to continue, or where do you think we're headed?
Yeah, it's a good question with the economy because I don't know what I've been thinking it was going to collapse for several years. There's no way they can just keep this game going, and they seem to find a way, even though it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't seem to be a reflection of reality in any way. We've just papered everything over, and these are very clever people. They know what they're doing, and the economy is, it's overly complicated, and it's out of hand. It's too corrupt. So I don't know what to make of that. Yeah, it could be a bubble ready to pop, but I've been saying that for too long, so I don't know what to say anymore. Certainly they could. Maybe they're trying to inflate it and pop it and blame it on Trump, or create some kind of crisis with it. Who knows? I don't put anything past anybody. These are very smart people who want to stay in power and keep running the show. But I don't know. Maybe the economy. I think he's going to help turn the economy around if he gets in and gets a chance at it. I think the only way permanently or to make real progress would be to end the Fed and start the system over at some point. So I don't know how long this system's going to last. So I forget. There's another part of that question that I forget.
I mean, it's kind of a. It was a very open-ended question. You could have taken any
Right.
direction you wanted, and that's fine with me because I think it's going to be a major story as we go through this holiday season and kind of check out consumer confidence, and we're going to see some jobs reports. Actually, we got to get Ben Weinbrower back in for that. He studies this stuff more than most of the people that we talk to. He was a never Trump during the process, and it's going to be interesting to kind of do that recap show. I know we've been meaning to for a while, but I'll reach out to him about that. But for now, Blake, let's shift our attention back over to this one, this chart. You know, if you're on the New American Media Facebook page, put it this way: if you're not, you should be. Just search the New American Media and join our Facebook page or the Agree to Disagree group. But we tweeted this out and sent this out on Facebook as well, probably on Instagram too. Follow us on Instagram. It's kind of like this. It's like a Venn diagram. It's kind of a chart of news that's worth reading, and some things that are labeled garbage. Blake, do you want to set us up on this one? I'm sitting here looking at it like, who put this together? I have so many questions about this, and you were saying you wanted
Sure.
to kind of break this down for us.
Yeah, we could go over it because this is going to be an interesting battle coming up because we have got the war on reality and news and information and who's telling the truth. This kind of ties into the beginning of the show. The citizen journalists like us. We were just wanting to be regular people, and then we know we're being lied to, and we know the country and the world's not going in the right direction, and we've volunteered to help out and to challenge these narratives and to be the media. So now it's becoming a matter of credibility and who's telling the truth, and this battle over what's real, what's fake. I mean, the pushing out the Russian narrative, and that's fake. You were mentioning one in the beginning of the broadcast that was fake. I forget which one, but also the Iraq War. Brian, did you want to fill me in? What was the other one you're talking about? Fake stuff.
Well,
Spreading fake news. Yeah, I know. But the Russian thing. There's a lot of different.
Well, they're even teaming up, trying to team up with Facebook, with Snopes, with Soros, with private funding to try to determine whose information is allowed to make millions of dollars of ad revenue and who is going to be punished financially for having the wrong opinions of the world. That's how petty this is getting, and this is becoming a very serious issue that people across this planet need to have a conversation about, because there are some countries that are trying to jump in and control the narrative and lie to our faces, and we're just not going to have that kind of world anymore. So the people that want to do a good job and try to keep things cool, we want those people to be running certain positions, but if they can't play nice, they really have to step aside and let the adults into the room, because we're headed to weird places with too many people that are making too many poor decisions, and we have to do better. That's how I view it, Blake.
No, absolutely. So now we have a big credibility battle. It's between these, major network people that have fancy journalism degrees from Ivy League schools, and they push the talking points and read the teleprompters, and they say that they're the real news, and not, these, citizen journalists or whatever aren't credible, or they go after their competition by saying they're spreading fake news when they're the ones that have been mostly guilty of spreading fake news. And to kind of preface this list you're talking about, this is coming from a few weeks ago. Speaking of fake news, the Washington Post really hurt themselves by they put out this blacklist, what Glenn Greenwald called this neo-McCarthyite witch hunt or blacklist, I think he called it, but it called Proper Not, and it was this anonymous group of experts who were put out a list of all these fake news outlets that were either they were Russian propaganda, whether directly or indirectly. And it was a huge list of who's who in the alternative media or conservative media. And it was just ridiculous because it wasn't true. They got called out on it. They had to retract it, and then there's people threatening to sue them over this. It doesn't make any sense. And they had to take that down, and they keep pushing the Russian conspiracy with anonymous CIA sources. I think they had to pull that down. I mean, they're losing this the old establishment media is really losing their credibility, and it's been going on for a number of years. And their approval rating, or their like people that really trust them, is like 6%, and so they've been losing revenue. Print's going out of business. Online revenues dropping, and we're seeing a whole changing landscape in media now. And so now, yes, their last desperate grasp is to push Russian and stuff, or whatever, or is just to shut down their competition by calling us all fake news. So, and yeah, then after that proper not thing blew up in their face, then they put out this new list of showing who all the chosen media outlets that are credible. And it's like a big infographic, and then who's not credible, and then of course it's all the very super establishment media that's the most believable, and then it's the alternative media or Breitbart or Daily Caller, all these all their competition basically is saying that they're fake. And so then, InfoWars is put out their own different list, and they were putting out, and I was showing you earlier, Alex Jones did some bit where he was talking about how people should, discuss this, go over the list, and, who do you think is, credible? Like, where's your go-to sources? Who do you believe? Who do you think is propaganda?
Yeah, it's very interesting, like to kind of build hey, you know what that's like, Blake? I got it. It's like let's build a fantasy football team of our favorite news sites, or the places where we go get information that we think is valuable. It'd be interesting. A fantasy football league. Let's do that, Blake.
If we know enough outlets, that's the issue. And just determining, just trying to think, maybe we could, rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 or something, like who's most trustworthy. But you could try to. If we had enough outlets that we all know who they are, we could probably set up like a fantasy draft of sorts, I guess. Yeah.
Hey, can we tell? Are you linked up with Jimmy yet? Anyway, we'll talk later. But maybe Jimmy could build that for us. Oh, that's interesting. No, but this is
like a bracket. Someone could make it like a March Madness bracket,
right.
A tournament of who's the most credible.
Yeah.
Have people vote on who's yes.
All right. Well, then let's think about this for a second. Try to put something together. But yeah, you're right. See, the reason I think this is so important, Blake, is, and I don't have time to play it all, but, if you go take a look, there's a video, Steven Crowder, where it's proof, YouTube restricting conservative videos. I've been running my site for 5.5 years, something like that. So
yeah.
I recently got something about how certain content was no longer eligible for monetization. And so anything that was criticizing Hillary Clinton or Hillary Clinton's policies, or Barack Obama or Barack Obama's policies, or there were a lot of claims that were made that videos were no longer palatable to their sponsors, so their sponsors are no longer eligible because too many people have flagged the material where you can't make money anymore. And there's a lot of media channels that rely on that revenue. And you got to realize, when you're linked up with YouTube, when you're there with Facebook, when you're there with Twitter, and how they handled the Milo Yiannopoulos situation, wherever you land on that issue, the people that control the dissemination of the information play a very crucial role, and I think their role should be just about completely minimal, except in ultra rare cases. And anytime these behemoth companies and conglomerates start to break it down into thought crimes and pre-crimes, and you can't even go certain places verbally, or you can't have deep conversations with people, and then everyone starts pointing fingers and saying that they're offended over this and that. The snowflakes are everywhere, and it's not just because it's December, Blake. It's something that our world has to figure out how we're going to get along with each other, and it's really a lot of bullying tactics that aren't really going to work out well if they go that route. So, I just know that's one of the reasons why it's so important to me. And when I look at that site, that picture rather, that infographic, it says that great sources of news are NBC News, ABC News, the AP, Reuters, the New York Times, the Washington Post, BBC, and NPR. These are great sources of news. Do you agree with that, Blake?
Not at all. and so that's so yeah, it's tough. I mean, AP Roy. I mean, we could go over individually, but yeah, I guess it's going to be up to a lot of people to decide who's who. But now they basically want to monopolize the whole process, and yeah, as I said, it's all the the elitist, far left, I don't know, corporate news that are basically the ones to trust, and that everybody else is not, and it's totally dishonest. But yeah, it's a good time to have a open discussion, as you said, with everybody, and everybody needs to take a look at that, and people need to get out of their comfort zone and maybe check out some of this stuff. I have maybe a better opinion on some of this stuff because I study so many different outlets, and it bothers me when a lot of people just stick to what they're comfortable with. Like if they just read the NPR and the New York Times, and then they convince themselves they're so informed and enlightened, and then they get into the real world, and you get into these battles of what's fake and what's not, and it's easy to convince yourself that the other side is fake and that you're telling the truth, but you don't really get a well-rounded amount of information from sources, so it's hard to say. And there's good and bad on both sides, and a lot of things to cover, and people see through their own lens. But yeah, we at some point we got to kind of get on the same page as people and start working on a better future rather than fighting over a lot of talking points and a lot of lies and stuff like that. We need to kind of get our facts straight and put all the ideas out on the table and find out what's closer to reality. So it should be an interesting little news war, if you will. And yeah, so the battle lines are drawn. So yeah, we've got charts, and now Brian,
Blake,
you and I can
got it.
Discuss this from here. Yeah.
Listen, I got it, Blake. Yeah. What was one of the key things that we witnessed? We were some of the first people to document this. We were some of the first people to kind of tie together what was happening, that this media turf war was in full force. Blake and I were at the RNC in 2016, and we caught Bretibart going up against The Daily Show, and it was hyper aggressive on the part of The Daily Show, and it even became physical briefly. Look, I'll tell you what, if you reach out and put your hands on another person, you better explain to me why that was necessary, and they can't. I'm not saying that the world ended that day, nor can I say that when the Young Turks spit on Alex Jones at the RNC Media Row right next to us, where we were at, and we actually happened to be right there watching a battle between media companies. And let's face it, that's what these are. Every person that puts out good stuff becomes their own media company. How hardcore do you do it? Are you full-time? Are you part-time? What is the role that you play? But you start to develop a body of work, and either you're trying to put out mostly accurate or funny information, but most of it is at least accurate if you were to think about it. I think it's important that we kind of figure out which clusters of people we should spend more time listening to, and this particular chart looks at these as just no. It actually labels them just no. The Daily Caller, Bretibart, Red State, InfoWars, and The Blaze. Do you find those to be a site that you would just never go to, ever? Just no, Becky.
Yeah, I think that's unfair. I think the Daily Caller and Bretibart do a lot of great work. I think Glenn Beck is a kook, but they do have some good journalism there. I don't agree with all of it, but they do some good stuff. I think InfoWars really tries, and they do a lot of great stuff. They're one of my favorite sites, even though they can be a little over the top as well, and they certainly have their flaws, like we all do. But to say just no, they don't want you to look at that. I don't know enough about Red State. I'd say I'm a little more skeptical. I think they were a little bit more never Trumpish, a little bit more hardcore neocon. I could be totally wrong. That's that's one I'm not that familiar with. The rest of them I do know, and that's very unfair for them to put that there.
Yeah, and then it lists some of these ones that are Better than not reading at all. That's CNN and USA Today. And then it kind of closer has Fox News on one side, MSNBC, and the Huffington Post on the other side. Good for confirming your existing opinions, but bad for convincing others. Be careful how much you hang out here. That's where Fox News is. Over on the other side, it's good for confirming your existing opinions, but bad for convincing others. Be careful how much you hang out here. And that's the Huffington Post, MSNBC, Occupy Democrats, Addicting Info, David Wolf, Natural News, and something else I can't read. How do you feel about that stuff where it says, don't read this?
Okay, well, I think Natural News does a lot of really good stuff. I enjoy their work. Yeah, you could say Mike Adams. Sometimes, yeah, he's can be use some inflammatory language. He's pretty hardcore in certain ways when he talks about political issues, but I think he's a really good guy, and he cares about his journalism. He does great work. I don't know a lot of that other stuff. I assume it's, well, I don't know. I can't make any judgment on that one. But Natural News doesn't belong there at all. Outside of that, I don't know about the rest. But I don't know which ones do you know. But I was going to say we could go over. We could also make our own list. But yeah, it's certainly interesting.
We need. All right, Here's what we need to do.
Sure.
We need to make a list, even if we just write it out and do a bracket and just write it on a piece of scrap paper.
Yeah, I've got a few. We could just rank them 1 to 10 or give a commentary. I don't even know.
Let's start with 4. Let's make a chart of 4, and we have to put in there the Daily Show and Breitbart, and then we'll put in InfoWars and we'll put in the Young Turks.
Oh, you're doing like the bracket style?
Yeah, the brackets or the overlaps with the Venn diagram kind of stuff. That's where we have to start. If there's any
major outlets, we could just go over and see what do we rank them as, like a scale of 1 to 10, like who's 10's the most trustworthy.
Okay,
or give them a score if they could want to put them on the tournament bracket.
Well,
I don't care.
Before we give them a score, give me one thought. Stream of conscious. When I say this media outlet, are you familiar with it or not? And if you are, what do you think of it? Vox.
Sure. Fox, of course, I'm familiar with it. I absolutely hated it during the Bush years. I warmed up to it little by little over the years. I'd say they do have some good programs. I like, I'd probably, I take them over CNN and MSNBC easily. I think Hannity, who I used to just absolutely hate. I think he's been really good the last couple of years. I think the new Tucker Carlson show has been great. I'm really proud of those guys. I like the Fox Business. I think Lou Dobbs is an excellent newsman. I really like Kennedy. I think she's one of my favorite shows. I think they've got some really good, credible people.
I like Greg Gutfeld.
That are worth watching.
I like Greg Gutfeld.
Oh yeah, of course I like Greg Gutfeld or Red Eye. Yeah, they do good stuff, or the Five even. I mean, there's things on there. Eric Bolling. I mean, there's some good personality. Even Brett Baer is a respectable straight news guy. I mean, they do have far better stuff than the liberal media can throw. I mean, I'm being intellectually honest, where I used to hate them. So, I mean, yeah, can they be biased? Of course. Do they play within a certain rules? Yes, but they do have some very good programs and some good people who I could trust. And yeah, I'd have to give them on a scale of 1 to 10. I think I'd have to give them at least, I don't know, it's maybe a 6.5, 6 to 7, somewhere in there. But I think at least a 6.
I'd say at least,
I'll keep it low and I'll keep it fair.
I'll say at least a 7. I'd be willing to raise that. At least a 7 now, if not an 8. I feel, hey, we need to hire one of those. Hey, got an 8, 8.5 over here. Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, but what about The Hill? You know anything about them?
Yeah, I mean, they're okay. I see some of their stuff on Drudge Report, but I wouldn't say I know enough about Hill to, I guess I would kind of loosely say they're in a, 6-7 range, maybe higher. I don't, that one I can't quite say. How about you, Brian?
Probably about a 5.
Okay.
I couldn't find my mute button. I'm sorry. I was setting up the. That's funny. That might be the first sneeze of my career.
All
Yeah,
right, but on the other side of Fox, what about what do you think of
that's awesome.
MSNBC?
Oh, that's fantastic. No, sorry, everybody. I was setting up two different computers, two different monitors, whole different rig, so I couldn't find my controls. I don't know. Look, I like Fox. The Hill, I just put it at 5.6. I don't know enough about it. Same with the Fiscal Times. The Economist, I've seen some good stuff. The Wall Street Journal.
Well,
And
I've got a
honestly,
few here. I'm trying to find some ones that we all know about. So I don't know if you
yeah,
want to maybe start with go through the TV ones for the networks first. We started with Fox. What do you think about so MSNBC? Where would you rank them?
they're about the worst thing I've ever seen. They're just brutal. They're horrible. They're just the worst. I don't even know how to put my thoughts together on the MSNBC crew. There is much less that I find redeeming and honest. I find some very vicious stuff, but I think it's coming from the wrong perspective, and I don't really like a lot of the battles that they choose to fight over there and the reasons that they do. Of course, there's always going to be overlap, and there's going to be some ecological, nobody wants to see oil in places it's not supposed to be, or fire burning down Gatlinburg, or earthquakes or tsunamis. Nobody wants to see that stuff anywhere. But where would I don't know, Blake. I don't know.
Okay, I'd say I'd maybe give them a 1.5.
So can I go negative, or should I not go negative points on that? Can I go negative, like -3?
No, they do a disservice. I think that is very blatant government propaganda. They stick to their talking points. And yes, they are pretty much hacks for the DNC. They have really embarrassing people on there, like Chris Matthews, who's not. I don't know how people can even watch a show like that, or Chris Hayes. I mean, they're not even trying. They have some really a sad group. I mean, Rachel Maddow's very smart, but I think she's really a hardcore authoritarian. Sticks to her talking points, is just not a very good person in a lot of ways. I don't trust her. I don't like what she does. I mean, yeah, but she's very smart, and but she's like a hardcore strategist. And I don't know who else. I mean, you can maybe get a little bit out of Morning Joe is sometimes has a moment or two that's worth sharing. I don't really generally like that either. I mean, but he's maybe the lone conservative voice, Joe Scarborough, who I don't agree with a lot. But I mean, there really isn't anybody on there that's any good. And they've had good hosts in the past. They've had, Donahue, where they tried to get Jesse Ventura. They had, Cenk Uygur back when he was a little bit more of a interesting rebel. They've had, I know they've had a couple other ones. Oh, I used to like Olbermann back in the day. Now he's a lunatic, but I mean, there used to be some good journalism, and during the Bush years, but now they're just hardcore, Obama apologists, and they're what Fox used to be during the Bush years. They're just but even worse. More of an embarrassment, and they stick to all the same talking points. They're just a cookie cutter shows, and they're not realistic. No, they're awful, in so many ways.
What about Huffington Post, Slate, The Atlantic?
Yeah, a lot of hackery. Occasionally, Huffington Post will put out some good articles. They're not like a total lost cause. They're not totally.
They have moments. They have plenty of moments. I just wish that they'd get their act together on the other stuff. They have plenty of moments.
Yeah, but I mean, they're meant to be, very left wing, and they, again, stick to those narratives. But yeah, occasionally some good stuff. You got to give them some credit when it's due. Some of those other ones, Slate seems really extremely liberal. Atlantic I don't trust them at all. Very establishment. I don't even really know where to even label them, if they're left wing or if they're neoconservative, but they're just not something I take seriously or listen to. I don't like them. I mean, I will read their articles. I'll read anything that's good or that's interesting, but generally the Atlantic or David Frum, the guy who runs it, I don't like their stuff. You?
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with their stuff, which means I'm not actively sharing it that much, which means when I interact with things a little less, I'm either there because I definitely want to see how silly it's getting, or, I'm kind of waiting to see. I don't really interact with a lot of these sites as often as the others, which I don't know. For me, it just means either I haven't gotten around to digging through all their content yet, but I don't know. They have them listed up there. Great in-depth sources of news. Slate, Vox, Atlantic, The Guardian, I would say, has done some great work. The Glenn
Yeah, we
Greenwald
don't go over
stuff.
everyone, but I don't know if there's just ones that we both know. Do you like Salon or
Oh,
Vox?
yeah, I got Vox up there. I don't even see Salon on this list in front of me.
Oh
It
yeah,
has
you can just
Wall
make your
Street
own or whatever
Journal.
because there's different stuff on the other list as well. So depending on where you want to go, we're just kind of focusing on some. What do you think? Just back to networks. What do you think of CNN?
Well, on this list, it has them as better than not reading the news at all, and that it shows a partisan bias.
That's
Um,
their list. Remember, there's the second one. That's the main. Well, I don't even know exactly who put this one out specifically, but this is the mainstream version or the left wing version of what they think, how they interpret what the best top news stories are or news sources are. And yeah, and CNN, yeah, they're not giving a whole lot of love, right in the middle, but it should be a lot worse than that.
yeah, but on this list, that turns into sensational or clickbait and partisan bias. That's where it ranks on this list. Better than not reading the news at all. Sensational, clickbait, partisan bias. There's some of that there. I don't know that I would necessarily have them as the worst offenders. USA Today and CNN. The ones that seem insulated from that appear to be Reuters, the AP, ABC News, NBC News, New York Times, Washington Post, BBC, NPR. It's kind of like, I don't know, it kind of seems like the standard. It meets high standards and it's mainstream and there's minimal partisan bias. That's where they have them ranked. I think that's very, very, very generous. I think that's way too generous. How about you?
Oh no, yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't, AP and Reuters are probably reasonable. I don't really have a huge issue. I don't think with either one of those. Maybe they spin a little bit one way or the other, but yeah, I don't think NBC or ABC are that credible. New York Times has discredited itself quite a bit. Um, very liberal, very establishment. The Washington Post has some very professional journalists and does do some good work. It's that very elitist thing, but they put out a couple of major false stories in the last few weeks that should really undermine their credibility. Plus, they've got the hacks that work for them. They're very extreme Democrats. You got somebody like Greg Sargent runs the plumb line and does a lot of hackery and is working with the DNC through WikiLeaks. So there's there were some of the report. I mean, I like I forget what we met. Jonathan Capehart, who's a really nice guy, but he seems like he's in a position to defend the Obama administration no matter what, and that kind of hurts his credibility. Even though some of these people are really great writers, it's too bad that they have to stick to their talking points and stay in their bubble, and so they're not really.
You know who I
what they used
like? I'm sorry, I just remembered somebody I like.
Sure.
I think Ben Swan consistently does very high quality stuff.
Okay, right. Oh yeah, no. Okay,
So
we went
even
to
even
we went way to the other
individuals.
side there. So sorry.
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
no. I'm just thinking because now even individuals are their own media company. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. Is
Right.
the high average of the stuff that you put out there is pretty solid stuff. You might not even agree with it. You might think the joke's a little too far, whatever. But you kind of hang out with the people that are making sense. I just don't see a lot of these other sides making as much sense. But that's part of the reason why I just wanted to put something together because I don't know. Sometimes there are some things I have a very strong stance on, and there are other things that I'm willing to just talk about. I'm not really riled up one way or the other. I'm interested in having a conversation about it, whatever that particular item might be. But how are you going to get clicks? How are you going to get advertising revenue? How are you going to, function so that you can, as a source, be able to put the right team together and make it happen and consistently put out fantastic stuff? That's a key question that a lot of people are asking, and we're seeing the slipping of power from some of these behemoths. What we're witnessing, Blake, every time we see something completely like the World Wrestling equivalent to a foot to the groin, if you will, kind of a cheap shot or something blatantly honest, just something below the belt. When you start seeing NBC News and ABC News and the New York Times and the Washington Post and the BBC and NPR, when you see them putting things out that are just complete garbage, it really damages their credibility and it knocks them down a peg as far as, where I rank, where I want to, trust, air quote, trust a news source. But I've been saying it for a long time. It's all you have in the social media world with all this stuff, Blake. It's the trust of the people who are checking it out. And if they trust you, they're going to keep coming back. If they don't trust you, hopefully complete lies and complete garbage places, they're going to stop having such a dominance on the advertising revenue. And I think we've witnessed what may have been a flip-flop in this election. We might have seen their grip of power completely come unhinged, and we're in for interesting times. But hey, we got you for about another 60 seconds here. Why don't you try to wrap this all up for us, Blake, and we'll try to do it again, okay?
Oh, we got to wrap this up, yeah, because we were gonna hit the last one, NPR, and say that hit some of these right-wing stuff or some of the other alternative media. You brought up Ben Swan, but just to kind of go over and finish the list, where you got to run.
Let's go through them. Let's go through them a little faster.
All right. Well, did you rank NPR?
NPR is okay. I'd give them a 5.
Oh, really? Okay. I'd probably give them a 3. I think they're let me say, they do some good stuff, but they're very much like, to me, they're like a government mouthpiece. It's just total propaganda.
NPR, BBC.
Really sorry, what?
No, I was just gonna say a lot of these. I trust them as far as I go. Well, they're gonna have to be telling one heck of a doozy if I haven't heard it as being false at this point. So I kind of lump them in that. We'll wait and see. I don't know. I don't see them as particularly as bad as some of the others, but I will say this. I will say that I could probably break this list down in detail. I think we could do a show per day on each of these outlets and some of the things we've seen. I think it'd be very interesting to kind of rank the truthiness of these sites. I think it'd be very interesting to kind of see who tells a higher percentage. But I think it's just very dangerous when you start getting to determine what a fact is if it goes against your way of thinking. I think that's a dangerous, slippery slope to get into, Blake, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's important to have these conversations while we can, because there will be repercussions on the things you're allowed to say and the things that rule the day, if you will, as far as trying to exist in a polite society along a bunch of people that might have very different ideas on life than you do. I think that there should be fewer fatal flaws in people's thinking that makes them hate. I don't like seeing people hate a neighbor or someone that they know because of certain political policies, but I think it's very dangerous when you handle racial issues the way that this president has, the way that their attorney generals have, the way that MSNBC and the Huffington Post has. I think that there are real-world repercussions for the way that they've handled this, and I think it's dangerous to mislead people in so many ways just to have some sort of confirmation bias, even when you're lacking information. I think it's very dangerous the way that they've played this. So I do recognize it as being very important, but I could probably talk about this subject, Blake, every single show that I do between now and 2018, because I think it's fascinating to dig into. If you could break some of these news outlets down for what they're known for, I think it is a fantastic subject. So I think for us, look, we got the Daily Show going up against Bretibart on one side. This is our graphic. So we have them as opponents, And then as other opponents, we have InfoWars, and they're going against the Young Turks. I don't know how that diagram looks, but I would like to put it together, Blake. So anyhow, man, I will talk with you about this more going forward, but I think it's fascinating to kind of rank the teams. So I'll give you the last word here.
No, that's all right. We can, I guess we can make a list or go over them another time or go over to the other side. And, it's just a matter of, getting out there and getting into the debate and not letting these guys, go and control who's real and who's not.
Yeah, exactly. You start to enter a really weird space when that happens. All right, well, check out Blake's work on youtube.com/TheNewAmericanMedia. Check him out at Eccentric99. Wait, give out your stuff, Blake. It's at Eccentric99 on Twitter.
Yeah, it's Twitter and my website. Get there from there if you want, or it's eccentricperspective.com. Yeah, or as Brian said, most of my stuff's on American Media.
Awesome, man.
New American Media.
The New American Media. All right, you enjoy frigid Minnesota, and I'll talk with you soon. You have a great evening. And for everybody else out there in the TNAM radio network, I just want to say that I appreciate you. I love you. I want you to subscribe, youtube.com/TheNewAmericanMedia. Check out TheNewAmericanMedia.com. Yeah, we'll talk again soon. By the way, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. Celebrate. Just celebrate life.